Matter of fact, if you think back just a short time ago to the year 2000, when George Bush was running, guess what he ran on? And guess what he won on? He was running against an interventionist foreign policy. He was running against Clinton's policy of intervention, nation building, and the policeman of the world. And he was elected on that. There's nothing wrong with being a conservative and come up with a conservative belief in foreign policy where we have a strong national defense and we don't go to war so carelessly. What is not conservative about saying, don't go to war unless we go to war properly with a full declaration of war and no other way? Unconstitutional wars cost a lot of money. They undermine our constitutional principles. And as Randolph Bourne said, war is the health of the state. So if you like small government, you need to work hard at having a strong national defense that is not so militant. Personal liberty is the purpose of government, to protect liberty, not to run your personal lives, not to run the economy, and not to pretend that we can tell the world how they ought to live. Now, for those who disagree, I have a few comments because I understand the disagreement. I've been there, and I've been in the service. I've spent 5 years in the service, and I know all the argument. But the bottom line, eventually, for all conservatives and all constitutionalists will be, how are we going to pay for it? It's driving us to the bankruptcy. We are now spending $1 trillion a year to manage our world empire. We're in 140 countries. We have 700 bases. And quite frankly, have you noticed the debt is exploding? And it's not all because of Medicare. And believe me, we don't have enough conservatives on the Hill to start tinkering with Medicare. They're not going to cut that. So eventually, this country probably won't do what I suggest, that we back off and back down, spend only the money that's constitutional. I've made 2 promises in my district. I will always vote what I have promised. I will always vote the Constitution, as well as I will not vote for one single penny that isn't paid for, because debt is the monster. Debt is what's going to eat us up, and that is why our economy is on the brink. We haven't had the collapse, and we haven't had the correction. We are on the brink of a financial cataclysmic event, because what we're leading to, because we're spending too much money, we borrow too much, and at the present time, the Chinese have backed off on what they're loaning us. Interest rates are starting to go up. Inflation factors are coming up. Believe me, the next step is a currency crisis, because there will be a rejection of the dollar. The rejection of the dollar is a big, big event. And then your personal liberties are going to be severely threatened, because then we'll usher in people who say, well, just like they have so far, we've had an event. And this is not the Democrats alone. Democrats and Republicans, they said, oh, there's an event. So what we should do is spend more money, stimulate the economy, borrow more money. Still there wouldn't be enough. So what did we do? We go to the Fed and we tell the Fed, print more money. Believe me, it won't last. It's going to end. You can't double the money supply. You can't double the money supply and not expect some really big events within inflation. But back again to Woodrow Wilson. He was not an individual who respected civil liberties. And the conservative Republicans at the time fought him. On the Espionage and Sedition Act, the Republicans didn't like it. He arrested thousands of people because they showed dissent against the war. Yes. How do you want it? You want it that way? Yes. You may have a position on the war. Others may have another position. But we all ought to be together that you have a right of dissent, and you should never be put in prison for dissenting. A famous person was arrested back then. I wouldn't have agreed with his political beliefs, but he was a famous person, but he did speak out against the war, which he had a right to do, and that was Eugene Debs. And he was put in prison because he spoke out, and Woodrow Wilson didn't like him, and because the Congress passed these laws, which the Republicans objected to. But he was put in prison indefinitely, and I guess because of Woodrow Wilson's illness and all, toward the end, he never got a pardon. Do you know who gave him the pardon? Warren G. Harding, a Republican. There is nothing wrong with describing conservatism as protecting the Constitution, protecting all things that limit government. Government is the enemy of liberty. Government should be very restrained. And as I have said so many times, it's time that we do study and understand from a conservative viewpoint on how much we should be engaged around the world. And we have good backing from good Republicans of the past. But now, that is the past. I don't live in the past because I see freedom as a very progressive modern movement. But in the past, since Woodrow Wilson's time, we as conservatives, too many have taken on this saying that we are responsible, but that is a neoconservative viewpoint and not true conservatism. Who do you think it was that tried to keep us out of the wars? The Republicans did. One of the greatest Republicans, and he's called Mr. Republican. There's a statue over in Washington, and that is Robert Taft. He worked hard to keep us out of war. He also thought that it was a violation of our rights to have a military draft. He strongly opposed the draft. He was strongly opposed to NATO and didn't like the United Nations, and here we have, casually accepted all this. But who was it that coined the word the military-industrial complex, and beware of it? It was Eisenhower that told us about that. So there's every reason for us to think seriously about, what we really believe in and what conservatism actually really means. In 1956, I was in college, but I thought a draft was coming because the French and the British, got into a fight over the Suez Canal with the Egyptians. The Egyptians running the canal. So I was worried because I thought I'd be drafted. I wasn't drafted for 10 years after that, but I thought I'd be drafted because they came to Eisenhower and they said, "Come help us, take care of us. They're taking this canal." And Eisenhower said, "I'll have no part of it." But back 100 years ago, especially around Woodrow Wilson, what happened in this country is we took freedom and we chopped it into pieces. We don't think of freedom as something unified. There is only one kind of freedom, and that's individual liberty. Our lives come from our Creator, and our liberty comes from our Creator. It has nothing to do with government granting it. If you want small government to protect liberty, that is well and good, and that's what the founders believed. And that is exactly what the Constitution was written for. But if we have some group over here defending, economic liberty is good, that's right, we do, except a Republican president said, we're all Keynesians now, and we've been living with the Keynesian philosophy and economics. They're still all over the Hill. And how many people on the Hill are saying, "And the Fed"? But personal liberty, if our liberties come to us as individuals, they are not collective. Freedom does not come in groups. You don't have freedom because you're a hyphenated American. You have freedom because you're an individual, and that should be protected. But I do not believe freedom can survive, and I do not believe we as conservatives can contribute much if we still think freedom only comes in pieces, that you can protect economic liberty but not personal liberty. Sure, I imagine everybody in this crowd would say, yes, protect our right of free speech, protect our right to our religious values. But as soon as it comes to putting something in your mouth or in your lungs, you say, you don't have enough sense to decide what you should do, so we are going to use the heavy hand of government, come down and protect you against yourself.